Tak dobré odpoledne. Já vás vítám tady na tiskové konferenci k filmu Sklenka na rozloučenou. Děkujeme, že jste dorazili a dovolte mi přivítat tady delegaci filmu. Začnu ode mě směrem ke zdi, tedy v tom pořadí. Vedle mě sedí herec a především scénárista, autor scénáře Denis Moyer. Následuje Oscarová herečka Paquin. Samozřejmě režisér filmu Moyer. A uzavírají nám to producenti Cerise Larkin a Larkin. Tak, jestli můžeme, tak klidně začneme rovnou s dotazy. Tamhle vidím Českou televizi, prosím.
Dobré odpoledne, Martin Drachman, Česká televize. Před malým okamžikem jste divákům ve velkém sále po projekci... That's fine.
I can translate too if you want.
Testing.
Yep.
It's the same word in Czech, amazing. Prosím.
Dobré odpoledne ještě jednou, Martin Drachman, Česká televize. Před diváky ve velkém sále, kde jste teď uvedli váš snímek, jste jako manželé nevyloučili další možnou spolupráci. Zajímá mě tedy, jestli u vás panuje i shoda v tématech, jestli jsou témata, která vás rozdělují, na kterých se naopak shodnete, to by byla jedna otázka. A jestli mohu jednu otázku na Anu. Jaký je okamžik, který ve vás vyvolá tu samou situaci, nadšení a překvapení, stejně jako v okamžiku, kdy jste přebírala svého Oscara? Děkuji.
There was a lot of questions on this, so what
You
should
go first.
Okay.
You go.
Well, I mean, there's been many things in my life since that really wonderful thing happened to me as a small child that I'm very grateful for. I mean, my kids being born was probably a lot more exciting and important to me.
And he asked about collaboration. What kind of thematic we would be looking for if we were to work together again?
Can you start with that?
Okay. My instinct, my gut, always is that I look for things that are dramatic and dark and scratch away at the kind of the surface of human existence. And my friend at the end, my producing partner, always tells me that I have to find things with speedboat chases because I always look for dark stuff, and our collective roster
It's very dark.
is very dark. And but specifically with relation to Anna, we have just done a TV show, that is, Anna plays the lead character, and it is very funny and very dark. And so I think it's actually sort of managed to bridge one of the things that we're interested in, a flawed female, smart, funny, difficult character who uses humor to deflect often. And, I was very affected by Mike Leigh's Naked 20 years ago, whenever that was, 22 years ago, and 20 more than that. And so I've been looking for a film like Naked, a script like Naked, but with that humor that David Thewlis managed to bring to that film for Anna, something like that I would like to go on a journey with her with, that would go deep and dark, but also with that kind of sardonic humor within it.
Jestli můžu položit dotaz já, Denisovi, mně se strašně líbila ta sourozenecká chemie, kterou jste předváděli ve filmu společně se Cynthiou Nixon a Melissou Liou. Jako autor scénáře, nakolik to bylo napsané a nakolik to byla nějaká skutečná, možná přátelská chemie, přátelská interakce mezi vámi na place a bylo to přirozené, mimo scénář?
I mean, it's a written script. You know, there was some improv, mostly from Ed Asner. I don't think I ever improv'd, actually.
You did?
Did I?
Yeah.
I can
But
do
you're
that. I'm allowed
to.
to.
Screenwriter.
But there wasn't a lot. There was some at the tops and tails, meaning, you know, before we started shooting, there'd be a little bit of banter, and then we go into a scene. But the majority of it, I mean, 95% of it is scripted, But the chemistry is undeniable. Part of that comes from knowing each other for a long time. So I know Cynthia Nixon for a while. I had just worked with Melissa Leo. Anna and Melissa Leo know each other. We all know Stephen, and I know Stephen for a long time. So there's a great sense of ease and trust. And also, Stephen and I talk about this a lot. You know, it's people who have similar training and background. We all have background in theater. And so there's a great sense of everybody knows what they're doing. I think the brilliant thing about making a movie when you're 21 is that you're new to the world and you burst upon the scene with this great new energy. But the great thing about making a film when you're not 21, let's say you're 21 plus 30, whatever that adds up to, is that you bring a certain amount of craft to it. And everybody in that movie has this craft, this sense of knowing how to listen, and knowing how to jump in, knowing how to craft a moment, knowing how much silence is enough, you know, knowing when to push, knowing when not to push. And I don't know, we got great takes right out the box. You know, there weren't a lot of bad takes. We had a wealth to pick from, I think.
Yeah.
Nebál jste se, Stevene, trošku obsadit Denise? Chápu, že je to jeho příběh. Konzultoval to s vámi, znáte se velmi dlouho, ale mně se líbila už ta otázka, kterou tady Denis položil. Improvizoval jsem já v průběhu toho filmu. Měl bych se toho možná trošku asi jako režisér, ale nemám ty zkušenosti samozřejmě, ale jako režisér bych se možná trochu bál obsadit, byť svého dobrého přítele, ale přece jenom autora scénáře, trošku se bál toho vlivu.
The reason that I got into this particular script and into this story was very specifically to work with Denis. We were looking for something where we got to work together specifically. I had directed him on our show, True Blood, and he had he had created a character that was 3,000 years old. And believe it or not, he had created a kind of backstory for himself that covered those 3,000 years. And there was such a level of just
insanity,
but there was just such a level of well, obviously work ethic, but multi-layered facets of what was happening within this character. And there was one particular day where he was giving a speech, and I was in the scene and also directing, and he went back to a character that was within the story from 1,000 years before, and sort of embodied it. And I just said that day I wanted to work with him. So this film was very much came out of the desire to work with Denis. But on a sort of, there were times, I mean, I said this the other day, and it was funny because I had spoken very specifically at length with Cynthia and Melissa and Reese and Ed. We'd all had moments together, and a little bit with Anna as well, where we'd talked about who those characters were. But of course, Denis was playing himself, and or a version of
Yeah,
himself.
both.
And so those first couple of days when I saw him bringing this character to life was different for me. And I think it was different for Denis as well, because Denis always plays these kind of dark, multi-layered oddballs on screen. And here he was the sort of the hero of our story and front and center. And it was Denis. So we had a sort of chat about 2 or 3 days in, where, because we weren't sure where to pitch it and what that meant and how much, does he step in as a screenwriter? Does he step in to help with moments where we get stuck in the dialogue, or does he sit back? Is he an actor at this point? Is he a producer? Is he And so it was actually a really fascinating kind of journey that we went on, and Denis ultimately stepped back at that point and became an actor.
Yeah, I don't know how people direct themselves, and on set I was useless as a screenwriter because I was concerned with learning my own lines and I didn't want to have the conversations. But the weirdest thing about a story that is true is that when people ask you, well, why would I do that? I would say, because you did. I'm sorry, I have no other answer, because that's what happened. And that's not a very satisfying answer for an actor, but it was all I had.
I mean, there were also times where there were moments where Denis had invented things that the characters did.
Yeah.
And I don't think we really gave them any help then, because I think the question is, when you're creating these organic beasts, is that you go to the director and you say, why am I saying this? What am I doing? And the director has to come up with a smart way of giving a reason for that, even if he doesn't know what it is, as you know. So
we did have one moment of on the job script writing, because we had to move a scene from exterior to inside a car because of weather, and it was a fairly bizarre thing to do for a scene. And so we spent a lot of time figuring out the logistics, and I was like, wait, I have to justify this. I have to figure out why are we in the car? And so doing a little bit of writing here and there, and then continuing in the days after that, continuing to justify it by adding more writing and adding phone. It was kind of crazy. But the weather too.
Yeah.
The weather was insane, so we had to add little information here and there to help with the weather. So Reese and I have a great scene in the car where I say, oh, it looks like rain. He goes, no, those are snow clouds or whatever it was. That was kind of our way of covering ourselves, so whatever would happen.
Já musím říct, že je docela zážitek mít s vámi tiskovou konferenci, protože vy jste na sebe tak zvyklí, že už ani pomalu nepotřebujete pokládat otázky. Vy si tady začínáte hrát trošku slovní fotbal mezi sebou. Je to zajímavé sledovat to. Jednu bych si přece jenom dovolil ještě. Denisi, pro vás to je velmi osobní film, je to váš příběh a někde jsem četl, že to byla svým způsobem terapie napsat scénář pro tento film. Jak to ale vnímali ostatní členové štábu, a ona to je možná vlastně otázka spíš na Anu, vžili se do toho podobně, jako jste to třeba prožíval vy, ten příběh, to vypořádávání se smrtí, to říct, dopadlo to na ně, ta tíha toho příběhu?
I can't really speak for the rest of the cast, but certainly for myself, definitely the weight of responsibility of telling such a personal and very dark story, chapter in a family's life. That felt incredibly not stressful, but it felt like a lot of responsibility. However, what we're actually seeing of my character is largely in these flashback memories from the different siblings, and they each remember her in a slightly different way, and none of which are necessarily the same, and therefore it's almost like different sort of characters. And so each scene has its own integrity and doesn't necessarily relate to any of the other scenes that you see Colleen in. So as far as in the moment playing it, I was able just to commit to what was on the page and what I was getting from the wonderful actors I was working with. But yeah, the overall picture was definitely that, you know, I wanted to do it justice and to, you know, honor Denis's sister's memory.
And Cerise, as a producer, you know, all those guys who came and worked for us and women who came and worked for us, they came with a personal motivation in many ways.
Absolutely. I mean, obviously the script spoke volumes, and a lot of people wanted to come on board because they loved the material and they loved us. But we had incredible cast and crew at the top of their game that came on board to spend 18 days in the snow in Toronto in January. I think
but
a lot
some
of people,
whom who had been through similar...
Yes, well, a lot of those people, I mean, we've obviously all have families. We're all touched by loss at various times in our lives, and a lot of us are touched by mental health issues and suicide too. And I think there was a great sense from all of us of the weight that we were carrying with this film, that we were hoping to start conversations.
I'd just like to add as well, as the director, but also as a dear close friend of Denis, I obviously was carrying the weight of Kathleen's story, but also wearing the other hat of creating a piece of art and an entertainment made it sometimes quite difficult, because I would find myself going, you know, sort of whatever moment I'm thinking of, it doesn't matter, but I would find myself going, but is this going to play? Does this matter? We need a bit of light relief here, you know, and weighing that with how to tell Denis that and how we would talk about it was difficult. But a dear friend of mine killed himself at the end of 2015, and I hadn't seen him for a long while, but he was one of my best friends when I was younger, and he had gone through a difficult time, and I'd had to sort of remove myself from him, and it was a really interesting. It was a really interesting journey for me, because he was with me a lot, and I was thinking about his family. And just recently, I went to visit his daughter, and I was talking about the film, and I realized how much the film had, how resonant he had been for me, and it was really wonderful to be able to tell his daughter, who is now 21. He's got 3 other kids as well, who are all younger. But it was really interesting to be able to tell his daughter how it had been a really important motivating factor for me in telling the story right, but also for her to hear that he was being thought of in those ways, because he was an artist as well. And So I don't think there's anybody who, you know, is out there who hasn't been touched by or knows somebody who's been touched by something like this. And it felt very... So there's the weight of that, but there's also the importance of telling a story and letting people know that it's okay to have this conversation.
Nějaká otázka z publika případně? Pardon. Tak.
Hi, Will Tizard, Variety. Question for Denis. In seeing actors play your siblings, did you feel like you gained any insight into your sibling relationships? That's an unusual experience for a lot of people.
You know, they did a remarkable job. Cynthia Nixon wanted to know a lot about my sister, Pam, and so they actually spent a lot of time on the phone. They emailed back and forth, which is a very Pam-like thing for Cynthia to have done, which is just bizarre that she was channeling it. Melissa was the exact opposite. She was like, nope, got it, nope, it's all on the page, I don't want to know, which was perfect, because that is essentially my other sister, Pat. That's kind of who she is. And, you know, Anna and I spoke here and there, but I did say, this is your part. It doesn't matter for me about the reality of my sister. It matters about what you have to own it, and she did. Because that, to me, is the most important thing, is for an actor to own the part. And where I could be helpful, I wrote biographies for everybody and wrote backstories for everybody and explained my family dynamic. And then take it or leave it. I never had a moment on set where I felt like, ooh, that's not right. That never occurred to me. What was important for me was that by having other people playing those parts, I didn't really have to play exactly myself. I'm playing a version of myself. So Danny is the brother to Anna, Anna's character. He's the brother to Melissa's character. He's the son of Ed Asner's character. That's a very different thing in a weird way than playing myself. And I was really grateful for the level of distance because I needed it.
Hi, I'm coming to Israel. Anna, did you hesitate to play someone who suffered from mental issues and committed suicide? And how was it to work with your partner?
Well, I mean, I think, was I hesitant? No, absolutely not. I think these are important stories to tell. I think that many of us have been affected by mental health issues at various points, either personally or people we know and love. And I don't ever shy away from difficult material. It tends to be actually what attracts me to roles. And I love working with my husband. We've been working together as long as we've known each other, and that's sort of our happy place.
Někdo další? Ještě jednu? One more time?
You mentioned TV show that you are doing now. What can you tell us about it?
It's a TV show called Flack. It's set in the world of public relations in London. I play a public relations woman who is spectacularly good at her job and making everybody believe what she needs them to believe, but is very self-destructive and disastrous in her personal life, and has a lot of very, very compelling, very real, dark family issues that sort of are the reason why she's kind of a one-woman tornado. But it's also a very dark comedy. So some of the really pretty dark, nasty stuff that we end up sort of dealing with is handled with a lot of equally dark humor. And we just wrapped that a couple weeks ago. It was a Chasm production, our company, and I'm really excited about it. We're still in post-production right now and editing, but it's going to be on UK TV in the United Kingdom and Pop TV in America, and we're all really excited about it.
Nějaký další dotaz ještě?
Hi, I wanted to ask about the cast. Denis, when you wrote the script, did you imagine anybody of the actual cast to be in the movie? Second question, are you planning maybe a theater adaptation of the script? And third question, how was it on the set? Was it a family-like feeling always present when you were shooting? And how long did it take to shoot the film? Thank you.
I'll say a little bit, and I'll hand over to these guys. You know, when you do comedies, it's generally no fun. Like backstage at a farce is deadly because you're always worried about your laughs. And consequently, when you do heavy things, it's actually fun. So we had a great time. we not always. There were certain shoot days that were really grim and difficult. But for the most part, we had a riot. We had a lot of fun. I think back and I see mostly fun times that we had. I did not write it with anybody in mind. I wrote it looking at my family. I literally would close my eyes and hear my sisters or hear my brother. So I wrote them, and I didn't have anybody in mind when I wrote it. I was thinking of the real people, which is a different exercise. And I'll hand it over to you to answer the rest.
One thing I would say is that when Denis and I sat down to talk about who some of these actors would be, you do what you would do with any script at this point. You go, well, who would be the dream person to play this part? And you're also, unfortunately, but it's just part and parcel of making a film, trying to raise money. So, you know, you go to people and you're trying to create this sort of, you know, smorgasbord that will be attractive to producers to give you the cash to make it.
Yeah, I think one time half seriously suggested getting rid of me and finding somebody, you know, sexier, younger.
But we did talk about that.
We did talk about that. Like, should I bow
we
out?
did talk about skewing it down because,
Yeah.
Look, one of the things that happened though that was extraordinary is almost like I'm trying to actually think of. There were a couple of the people who said no were. Only a couple of people said no, and the people who said no specifically didn't feel that they could handle the material. They didn't want to go to the place that the material would take them. But we had, and I don't want to tell you who we had, because it's not fair to the people that we ended up with, but we had some extraordinary cast attached to the film for a long while. But the problem is that because you're not paying any money, you know, we made it clear to everybody, you know, if you have to go and do something, you go and do something. Go and do the job that's going to pay you the money. You know, we were lucky enough to have a couple of those people attached when we were raising funds, who then had to drop out. But by the very nature
replace them with equally amazing.
Well, by the very nature of the way that things fall into place with indie film. We actually had Cynthia from day one, hadn't we?
Yep.
And Cynthia was a friend of Denis's. Just before Christmas, we were shooting in January. Anna called Melissa, and Melissa emailed the entire group a third of the way through the script saying yes. And she didn't even finish reading it. And in a way, Melissa's part is the sort of least. Has the least dialogue probably, and yet she was in, and that was extraordinary for us. Reese is an old friend of mine, and we had so many people playing that role who had said yes, but just weren't available in the time frame that we knew we were going to lose Cynthia because Cynthia was going off to do a play on Broadway, which she then won a Tony for.
Yeah.
So we only had Cynthia for 15 days, so we had to find actors that would be able to fit in with Cynthia's 15 days. Yeah. So Reese was a drop from the sky that was a friend of mine I did my first job with in 1991. And I'm just telling you this because it's so interesting how these things come together and then become I cannot imagine Reese not being in the movie.
It is the right cast.
I think it's one of the most beautiful, he's a wonderful actor, but I think it's one of the most beautiful performances he's ever done. And so for me, as an old friend of his, who I hadn't seen him for like 10, 15 years, but we used to be really close, watching him, you know, Dennis bumped into him the other day, and he's really skinny because he's doing a rehearsal for a show that he's doing. And he was skinny before he arrived, but when he was with us in Toronto, he felt that Carl wouldn't be skinny. And Reese just ate for like a month and a half. He just ate. The scene where he's eating the pancakes, where Ed comes in and says, you know, Carl's had like 3 pancakes already. Reese was making pancakes in rehearsal and just like stuffing them in his face. By the time he left, he was like 50 pounds, 60 pounds bigger than he was when he arrived. Anyway, and then he had to go back to do another job, and he lost it all again. But it's a very interesting exercise to watch something come together and watch this perfect cast just be, and somehow then believe that they are this family. And it felt like when I watched the film, I feel this deep familial connection between them, and it's kind of extraordinary.
Já bych jenom rád poděkoval, že jste Denise nevyměnili za někoho mladšího. Myslím, že se sám na sebe hodí asi nejlépe.
We agree.
Thank you. I'll tell my agent.
Dobrá. Jestli ještě nemáme další dotazy z publika, tak bych poděkoval všem přítomným za to, že sem dorazili. Především bych vám chtěl poděkovat... Sorry. I can do it in English if you want, but... Chtěl bych poděkovat za to, že jste nás nechali nahlédnout do toho příběhu, protože mě osobně to skutečně velmi zasáhlo, i to, jakým způsobem ta rodina spolu komunikovala, takže děkujeme za takovou sdílnost ode všech.
Thank you.